The year is 1845, and a quiet, profound transformation is washing over the cobblestone streets of old New York as the heavy gears of the Industrial Revolution turn, casting long, soot-growing metropolis. An emerging elite searches for a silent language of refinement. In the midst of this shifting world, a visionary named Charles Lewis Tiffany, the first high-end jewelry catalogue in American history, the Fickery high-end jewelry catalogue, arresting colour to grace its cover, he chooses an unfamiliar, breathtaking hue, inspired by the delicate porcelain S-egg, a soft greenish-blue, the cyclot landscape, that will forever redefine the psychological landscape of luxury. Hey friend, adjust your pillow for me, stretch out your legs, and pull that heavy blanket just a little closer to your chin. You are safe here, away from the loud, demanding rush of the modern world. Let your shoulders drop as we step back into a time of flickering oil lamps and steady rhythmic artistry. The room you are in is dark, save for the warm amber glow of a single lantern resting on a sturdy oak workbench. We are standing inside a quiet, nocturnal printing house in downtown Manhattan. The air smells rich and heavy, with the grounding scents of mineral oil, unwashed wool, and drying rag paper. Every movement here is slow, deliberate, and entirely free of urgency. This evening is yours to simply rest, to let go of the day's heavy thoughts, and to allow the gentle rhythm of the past to carry you away. As we sit here together in the dim light, listening to the soft murmur of the city settling into its evening slumber, remember that this space is entirely dedicated to your peace of mind. Remember, the stories we share tonight on Whispers of Centuries are crafted gently, offered to you as a soft blanket for your thoughts, a quiet sanctuary where you can learn, drift, and slowly release the burdens of the waking world. This is a work of creative historical narrative relaxation solely for entertainment, relaxation, and educational purposes. While rooted in verified archives, certain scenes and atmospheres have been textually reimagined to provide an immersive auditory experience. We are here simply to breathe, to listen, and to watch the ink dry. Outside the frosted window pane, a light autumn mist begins to fall, softening the distant clattering sounds of iron-shod hooves on stone. Inside, the only sound is the steady repetitive purr of a manual printing press. Your hands, calloused but incredibly precise, guide a thick sheet of cotton blend paper beneath a heavy copper roller. The roller moves with a dull, soothing thud, lack-cack, over and over again. With each slow revolution, a thin, perfectly even layer of freshly mixed ink is pressed into the textured grain of the page. It is that exact mesmerizing shade of robin's egg blue. It is not green, nor is it merely blue. It is a soft, cool breath of nature captured on a page, standing out beautifully against the dark, stained wood of the press. As you lift the printed sheet, the paper makes a soft lat-sat sound, a gentle rustle that seems to mimic the sound of the wind blowing through dry grass. You lay it carefully on the wooden drying rack, alongside dozens of identical pages, all glistening faintly under the low lantern light. The ink is thick and smooth, reflecting the flame in a dull satin sheen. There is no rush in this room. Each page requires time to breathe, time to settle, and time to dry. Your eyes follow the long, elegant lines of the typography, the neatly carved letters announcing the arrival of something entirely new to the American consciousness. The quiet weight of the room feels ancient and protective, a small pocket of timeless craftsmanship, hidden away from the booming metallic pulse of the 19th century city. We watch the soft flame flicker against the wall, casting slow dancing shadows across the rows of blue pages. The world outside can wait. The work here is quiet, peaceful, and beautifully still. The midnight hour passes without a sound, and the quiet workspace seems to expand in the dim amber glow. Every surface in this old New York print shop carries the history of slow, deliberate labor. Underneath the heavy wooden beams of the ceiling, the stillness is absolute, broken only by your own slow, steady breathing. You reach out to touch the edge of the workbench, your fingers meeting the rough, reassuring grain of oak that has been stained by decades of black and sepia inks. But tonight, the residue on the wood is different. There is a faint, powdery dust of ground minerals hanging in the air, a clean earthen scent that mixes with the deep, grounding aroma of drying linseed oil. You pick up a small wooden spatula, its handle worn smooth by the grip of your palm, and gently stir the remaining ink in the stone trough. The ink moves with a thick, luxurious drag, making a soft, wet sound as it folds over itself. Each slow swirl reveals the hypnotic depth of this new color. It is a shade that seems to defy the industrial grime accumulating outside these walls. In an era dominated by the dark greys of coal smoke and the harsh browns of wet mud, this robin's egg blue feels like an intentional act of preservation. It is a small fragment of a clean, distant sky brought indoors, waiting to be pressed into the memory of the city. The oil lantern on the corner of the desk splutters softly, a tiny, comforting click of metal expanding in the warmth, sending a gentle wave of light across the stack of unprinted cotton pages. You take a deep breath, feeling the cool, stagnant air of the basement workshop fill your chest, grounding you completely in this single moment. There is no need to think about tomorrow, no need to wonder how the city will change when the morning sun strikes the steeple of Trinity Church. Your only task is to remain here, in the comforting shadow of the press, watching the light dance across the smooth surface of the stone ink block. The silence of the room is protective, a thick barrier that keeps the frantic pace of the 19th century world at bay. You pick up a clean brayer, a heavy roller made of dense vulcanized rubber, and roll it slowly across the ink slab. It makes a rhythmic, tacky sound, a soft, consistent whisper that speaks of perfect viscosity and unhurried preparation. With a steady, unhurried motion, you apply the blue ink to the raised metal type of the cover design. The copper plates, beautifully etched with ornate Victorian borders, drink in the colour, transforming from cold metal into a canvas of soft turquoise. The contrast is beautiful, the brilliant, clean hue sitting perfectly within the dark, heavy frame of the iron press. You take a single sheet of heavy paper, feeling its cool, substantial weight between your fingertips, and position it over the bed. There is a profound simplicity in this repetition, an ancient rhythm that slows the pulse and clears the mind. As you pull the long iron lever towards you, the counterweights groan with a low, deep resonance that vibrates faintly through the floorboards and into the soles of your feet. Soul for time. It is a grounding sensation, a reminder of the physical weight of time and the beauty of things made slowly by hand in the deep quiet of the night. The iron lever returns to its resting position with a faint metallic sigh, leaving a profound stillness in its wake. You carefully lift the timpan, the parchment-covered frame that holds the paper in place, and a soft, crisp rustle echoes through the room. It is the sound of the freshly printed page peeling away from the metal type, a gentle, rhythmic tearing sound that is incredibly satisfying to the ear. You hold the page up to the light of the whale oil lamp, inspecting the perfection of the impression. The text is sharp, black and elegant, but it is the border and the background that hold your gaze. That magnificent, unyielding shade of robin's egg blue. It sits upon the heavy cotton rag paper with a velvety texture, completely transforming the utilitarian material into an object of quiet desire. As we watch the ink settle into the fibers, let yourself sink a little deeper into your bed. If you are enjoying this peaceful journey into the forgotten corners of history with whispers of centuries, perhaps take A soft, effortless moment to gently press the like button or subscribe to our quiet space. Only if you feel comfortable, like a slow nod between friends in the dim light. There is no rush, no pressure, just a gentle invitation to stay connected in the stillness. You place the new page onto the drying rack next to its predecessors, the wood slat shelves holding the weight of Charles Tiffany-esque grand vision. Outside, the distant muffled chiming of a church bell marks the passing of another hour. 3 slow deep tones that dissolve into the mist before they can fully form. The city is asleep, completely unaware of the aesthetic revolution being quietly manufactured in this basement. You look down at your fingertips, noticing a small smudge of the blue ink near your thumb. It feels cool against your skin, a physical connection to the natural world that inspired it. In the 19th century, blue was a difficult colour to master. Most blues were dark, derived from indigo or Prussian chemicals, associated with the heavy uniforms of labourers or the bleak tones of winter utility. But this hue is different. It carries the warmth of spring, the promise of an untouched nest hidden away in the deep green woods of upstate New York. It is a colour that whispers of privilege, not because it is loud, but because it is so entirely clean. In a world where everything is increasingly covered in the black soot of progress, where cleanliness, the ultimate purities, are becoming the ultimate luxuries. You reach for the heavy ceramic jug on the floor, pouring a small stream of water into an iron basin to rinse your hands. The water splashes with a hollow, soothing sound, a clean, liquid melody that fills the dark corners of the shop. You wipe your hands on a rough linen towel, the fabric coarse and comforting against your skin. The repetitive nature of the work brings a deep, meditative focus, an isolation from the worries of life. Every motion is a loop. Ink the block, place the paper, pull the lever, lift the page. Over and over, a steady, unhurried metronome for a tired mind. The dark wood of the press seems to absorb the worries of the day, leaving only the pure, visual poetry of the colour and the soft, rhythmic lac-cac of the copper joints. The damp towel is laid across the edge of the wash basinese with a soft, heavy thud, and the silence turns to wrap itself around the room like a well-worn wool cloak. You look across the long wooden table where the rows of completed catalogue covers rest, their surfaces catching the low, amber light of the lamp. The ink on the earliest pages has begun to lose its wet, mirror-like gloss, settling instead into a rich, matte finish that resembles the soft skin of a wild plum or the quiet surface of a shaded pool. When you run a dry, clean finger along the unprinted margin, the paper greets your skin with a reassuring, latsat texture, a dry, fibrous whisper that speaks of old-world quality, of rags gathered by hand and boiled down in the clean waters of rural paper mills. There is a striking contrast between this subterranean sanctuary and the aggressive, metallic pulse of the city expanding just a few blocks away. Above your head, beyond the thick stone foundations and the heavy oak joists, New York is building its future V-keep hat iron beams, steam engines, and the loud clanking machinery of progress. The world up there is hurried, driven by an insatiable desire to conquer space and time, to turn everything into a commodity of speed. But down here, beneath the street level, the passage of time is measured only by the gradual drying of ink and the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of your chest. You pick up a bone folder, a smooth, polished piece of cattle bone used to crease the spine of the thick pages. It feels cool and heavy in your palm, its surface entirely unmarked by time. You slide it gently along the edge of a guide rule, the friction producing a low, consistent hiss. A soothing sound that cuts through the stillness without disturbing it. Every movement is executed with a calm, philosophical precision. There is no room for haste when creating an artifact meant to define an era. This colour, This particular shade of robin's egg blue demands a perfect canvas. If the paper is too rough, the ink will pool unevenly. If the press is pulled too quickly, the delicate borders will blur. And so, you move with the deliberate slowness of an artisan who understands that beauty cannot be coerced. The oil lamp casts long, quiet shadows that stretch across the stone floor. Moving softly as the wick drinks the last of the oil, the flame behaves like an old friend, dipping and rising, painting the walls in shades of gold and deep charcoal. You look at the dark wood of the printing press, its heavy frame standing like a silent sentinel in the centre of the room. It has seen thousands of pages pass through its jaws, but tonight feels different. Tonight it is helping to give birth to a visual and the steamships that will outlive the iron rails and the steams. You feel a sense of profound detachment from the trivial worries of the waking world. The bills that need paying, the crowded streets of the morrow, the endless noise of the docks, all of it dissolves into the soft blue ink resting on the paper. There is only the texture of the cotton fabric, the earthy scent of the pigment, and the deep, restorative quiet of a midnight workshop. You take another clean sheet from the stack, its edges slightly frayed, and hold it up to the light to admire the watermark. A faint, translucent mark of quality, woven directly into the soul of the paper. As the paper rests in your hands, your thoughts drift to the man behind this unconventional choice. Charles Lewis Tiffany, a man who looked at the bustling, muddy streets of New York and saw a need for something entirely pure. In 1845, the traditional symbols of wealth were heavy, dark, and imposing. High society favoured deep crimson velvets, dark mahogany woods, and opulent golds that seemed to shout their value to the world. Those colours were safe. They were the established language of old European aristocracy. But Charles Tiffany possessed a different kind of wisdom. He understood that true luxury did not need to shout. It merely needed to be unforgettable. He turned his back on the common reds and royal blues that filled the shops of lower Manhattan, seeking instead a shade that carried the weight of quiet distinction. He found it in the unglamorous quiet corners of nature, in the simple fragile shell of an American robiness egg. To choose such a colour for the cover of his very first blue book was a silent rebellion against the industrial grimness of the era. It was a philosophical statement that elegance could be found in the untamed, pristine clarity of the natural world, in the rigid social circles of old New York, where every family sought to outshine the next. This unique hue became a subtle line drawn in the sand. It separated those who merely had wealth from those who understood grace. As you stand by the workbench, the gentle lack-cack of the press mechanism resetting reminds you of the patience required to bring such a vision to life. You look down at the stone block, where the blue ink sits in perfect, tranquil stillness. This colour does not demand attention through flashiness. It captivates through its absolute calm. It is a shade that makes the chaotic, roaring streets of the city fade into insignificance. For the wealthy patrons who would soon receive this catalogue, holding this blue cover would feel like holding a small, pristine piece of a world untouched by smoke and soot. It was an invitation to step into a higher, more refined state of mind. The oil lamp flickers again, casting a soft golden warmth across your knuckles as you prepare the next sheet. The room feels incredibly safe, insulated by have stood for generations. You can hear the faint comforting rustle of the paper. Sat as you move it onto the press bed. Each movement is an act of preservation, a slow and deliberate contribution to a legacy that is just beginning to take root. The air carries the faint, sweet scent of burning tallow from a nearby candle, adding another layer of warmth to the dark room. You realize that you are not just printing a catalogue, You are forge a new cultural language, a visual signature that will whisper of elegance for centuries to come. The simplicity of the choice is what makes it so powerful. It requires no complex explanation, no grand judge of perfection. It is simply beautiful, standing alone in its quiet, greenish-blue perfection. You lower the frame with a steady, unhurried hand, allowing the weight of the iron to meet the soft cotton paper once more. The dull, muffled thud of the press satisfies the ears, a low frequency that coaxes your mind into a deeper, more peaceful state of relaxation. The world outside may be rushing headlong into a loud and uncertain future, but in this room, under the soft guidance of the lantern, time moves as slow as a winding river. The night deepens further, stretching out its quiet arms to cradle the old printing house in a state of absolute serenity. The hours have slipped away like water flowing under a bridge, leaving behind a profound, heavy stillness that weighs gently upon your eyelids. You can feel a warm, comforting weariness settling into the muscles of your shoulders, a soft fatigue born from honest, mindful labor. It is a good kind of tired, the kind that tells your mind it is safe to slow down, safe to release the day. You stand before the wooden drying racks, looking at the rows of Robin S. egg blue covers that you have carefully created with your own hands. They sit there in perfect alignment, a silent chorus of color reflecting the dying amber light of the oil lamp. With slow, deliberate movements, you reach out to touch the wooden shelf, feeling the cool, slightly damp wood beneath your palms. You begin to stack the earliest covers, those that have completely dried, in preparation for the final binding. Each page makes a dry, whispering rustle, lat-sat, a soft, rhythmic song that feels like a lullaby for the waking world. The paper feels thick and substantive, its texture a tactile reminder of the unhurried care poured into every single press of the iron lever. As you lift each sheet, you take care not to smudge the neat black typography that proudly announces the birth of Charles Tiffany masterpiece. The work is nearly done for this evening, and the quiet satisfaction of a job well completed brings a deep, calming peace to your chest. The air in the workshop has grown cooler now, a gentle autumn chill creeping through the cracks of the heavy timber doors, contrasting beautifully with the radiating warmth of your own body and the small flame that continues to dance against the wall. Your breathing synchronizes with the quiet rhythm of the room, a slow, steady tide of air that carries away the lingering thoughts of the busy world outside. Every corner of this dark basement is filled with the grounding sense of ink and paper, creating a cocoon of safety where time has no power. You place the final stack of blue covers onto the main assembly table, their edges perfectly flush, forming a solid block of that mesmerizing, protective turquoise shade. It is beautiful to look at, a mountain of pristine color amidst the shadows of the night. You look closely at the texture of the ink once more, noting how the tiny imperfections of the handmade paper give the color a living, breathing quality. It is not a flat, artificial coating, but a rich layer of history bonded with the cotton fibers. The oil lamp gives a tiny, soft splutter as the wick shortens, its golden light dimming just a fraction, casting longer, softer shadows across the floorboards. You can hear the distant, muffled sound of waves lapping against the lower Manhattan piers, a rhythmic, low-frequency murmur that seems to ground the entire island in a deep, elemental slumber. There are no carriages passing by on the streets above anymore. The city has finally given up its relentless pursuit of the day, allowing the silence of the midnight hours to take full command. You take a slow, deep breath, letting the cool air fill your lungs, feeling the tension drain completely from your hands and fingers. The heavy iron tools, the copper plates, the stone mixing blocks, they all rest now, their duties fulfilled under the cover of darkness. You are completely isolated from the noise, the demands, and the endless rush of life. There is only the soft glow of the lantern and the quiet legacy of a colour that will endure through the ages. It is comforting to know that this quiet sanctuary of knowledge and relaxation is here for you. Whenever the world becomes too loud, in this soft twilight space of our evening, it is reassuring to remind ourselves that the assistance of advanced AI tools and has been meticulously verified, meticulously reviewed, verified, and edited by the editorial team at Whispers of Centuries, all rights reserved. Until next time, listen closely to the whispers of the past, because you never know what timeless wisdom might quietly find its way into your night. The final stack of printed covers rests in perfect silent alignment upon the heavy oak table, bringing the first long chapter of this nocturnal journey to a graceful, unhurried close. The deep midnight hours have done their work, and the printing shop feels completely wrapped in a peaceful, timeless bubble. You take a slow step back from the heavy iron press, letting your arms hang loosely at your sides, feeling the quiet release of tension from your muscles. The air in the room has shifted slightly, growing cooler and more crisp as the early morning moisture begins to gather outside the brick walls. Through the small iron-barred window at street level, you can see the very first faint hints of dawn breaking over the distant horizon of Manhattan. It is not a bright, sudden light, but a soft, slate-grey mist that gently dissolves the absolute darkness of the night. The world outside is still asleep, caught in that fragile, beautiful moment before the noise of commerce begins to stir. Inside, the copper plates of the press have finally grown cool to the touch, their intricate engravings holding tiny, faint traces of the beautiful robin's egg blue ink that will soon captivate the city. You reach for the ceramic lid of the ink trough, placing it down with a soft, muted thud, a comforting final sound that signals the end of your labour. As you stand there in the dimming amber light of the lantern, looking at the fruit of your slow, deliberate work, a profound sense of calm washes over your mind. If you find yourself drifting into a peaceful state of relaxation, feeling the gentle embrace of sleep coming closer, perhaps take a soft, effortless moment to leave a quiet comment below, sharing a whisper of your thoughts with our small community at Whispers of Centuries. Only if you are still awake, and only if it brings a sense of comfort to your night. There is no need to hurry, just a quiet space for your mind to rest. You untie the heavy linen apron from around your waist, the fabric making a soft, sliding rustle as it slips off your shoulders. You fold it slowly, smoothing out the creases with the palm of your hand, and lay it across the back of a wooden chair. Every action is a slow meditation, a deliberate slowing down of the spirit. The drying racks are completely filled now, holding hundreds of pages that carry the exact, pristine shade of nature into the heart of the 19th century urban landscape. The smell of linseed oil and cotton paper remains ground into the room, a soothing, familiar scent that feels like a protective shield against the worries of the waking world. Outside, the autumn wind murmurs through the narrow stone alleys, a low rhythmic whistling sound that rises and falls like a gentle breath. It is a sound that has stayed the same for centuries, connecting this small dark room to the vast timeless landscape of the earth. You take one last look at the beautiful turquoise stacks, their surfaces holding the promise of a quiet luxury that does not need to shout to be remembered. The work of the hands is done, and the mind is now completely free to let go, to drift away from the details of the day and surrender to the soft, heavy weight of sleep. The printing press stands in the shadows, a silent, dark monument to craftsmanship, waiting for the world to wake up that was created in the deep quiet of the night. The morning sun finally crests the horizon, painting the grey stones of New York in pale, hesitant strokes of gold. The long night in the subterranean print shop has concluded, and now the fruits of that quiet labour are carried up into the waking world. As the heavy oak doors open to the crisp morning air, the first stacks of Charles Tiffany-esque Blue Book are carefully loaded onto a horse-drawn carriage. The iron-rimmed wheels teyurone slowly over the damp cobblestones, creating a low, rhythmic streets of Manhattan. It is a city of sharp contrasts. On one hand, the dark, heavy chimneys of factories pour thick black coal smoke into the sky, coating the brick buildings in a thin layer of industrial soot. On the other hand, inside the elegant brownstone mansions of the emerging elite, there is a profound hunger for something clean, untouched, and beautiful. When the first copies of the catalogue arrive at the doorsteps of Fifth Avenue, the response is immediate yet silent. Hands clothed in soft lace and fine wool reach out to take the volume, and as their fingers brush against the cover, a collective wave of astonishment ripples through the scene. Siestai. They have never seen anything like it. In a world where luxury has always meant heavy golds, dark velvets, and sombre maroons, this delicate greenish-blue hue feels like a breath of fresh spring air. It is a stunning visual shock to a society weary of industrial grime. The colour seems to radiate an internal light, standing out against the polished mahogany tables and velvet drapes of the Victorian parlours. Ladies and gentlemen gather around the morning fires, their eyes fixed on the pure, unblemished surface of the robin's egg blue cover. They turn the pages with a slow, reverent rustle, sat, admiring the intricate jewellery illustrations inside, but their gaze always returns to the colour itself. It represents a pristine, untamed wilderness that the city is rapidly paving over, an ideal of absolute purity and refinement. The contrast is mesmerising. Outside the window, the streets are filled with the grey mist of coal and the brown mud of progress. But inside, resting on a silver tray, the blue cover remains perfectly clean, completely immune to the dust of the modern world. It becomes an instant sensation, a quiet obsession that begins to reshape the collective desires of a generation. To hold the Blue Book is to hold a secret key to a world of elevated taste, a silent declaration that one belongs to a circle of true discernment. The soft crackle of fills the quiet rooms, as the elite lose themselves in the contemplation of this singular colour. It is the beginning of a craze that will sweep through the Victorian era, turning a simple choice by a New York jeweller into a permanent monument of global elegance. The city moves on with its loud, industrious day, but in the quiet spaces of the home root, whispering its promise of peace, purity, mystique, and timeless luxury. The obsession of the Victorian era with the natural world was not merely a passing trend, it was against the rapid industrialization of their daily lives. Liels, we dear lives. As factories expanded and iron soot cast a grey veil over old New York, the domestic space became a sacred temple of purity. Inside these grand brick and brownstone homes, every object was chosen to evoke an idealized, pristine version of the earth. This is why Charles Tiffany's choice of robin's egg blue struck such a deep, resonant chord within the collective soul of high society. It was the colour of a rare, undisturbed sanctuary, a visual promise that amidst the noise and smoke of progress, innocence and natural beauty could still be preserved. The colour began to appear in the quietest, most intimate corners of Victorian life. Imagine sitting by a tall arched window as a soft afternoon rain begins to fall, washing the cobblestones outside. Inside the parlour, the air is thick with the comforting scents of dried lavender, beeswax candles, and the heavy, grounding warmth of a coal-fed hearth. On a small mahogany side table, A copy of the Blue Book rests next to a delicate porcelain teacup. The soft greenish-blue cover seems to absorb the grey light from the window, radiating a quiet, tranquil energy that calms the eyes and eases the mind. To the Victorian consciousness, this shade was deeply tied to the concept of moral and aesthetic refinement. It was a colour that could not be easily manufactured or duplicated by cheap industrial processes. It required a precise artisanal hand. Therefore, to possess an item wrapped in this particular blue was to announce to the world that you valued the rare, the clean, and the untouched. It became the ultimate standard of elegance, a silent language understood by those who sought comfort in a rapidly changing world. You look across the room, watching the slow, rhythmic swing of the grandfather clock as brass pendulum. Lack-cack, lack-cack, a steady, unhurried measure of time that aligns perfectly with the slow, deep beating of your own heart. There is no need to hurry. The world outside can continue its relentless race, but inside this room, the soft rustle of a lady's silk dress as she moves across the plush carpet, sat, adds another gentle layer of sound to the peaceful atmosphere. Every detail in this space is designed to soothe, to insulate, and to protect your mind from the heavy burdens of the waking world. We are simply resting here, observing how a single choice of colour can transform the psychological landscape of an entire society, offering a quiet sanctuary of beauty in a world that so desperately needs it. The light fades slowly as the afternoon slips into dusk, casting long, soft shadows that stretch across the room, wrapping everything in a blanket of warm, protective darkness. Still, you feel your eyelids growing heavier, comforted by the timeless rhythm of a world that knows how to slow down and breathe. The quiet dusk deepens into a warm, protective evening, as we zoom even closer into the intimate spaces where this iconic colour begins to take its physical form. In a sun-faded dressing room overlooking the mist-shrouded streets of the old city, a small wooden table holds a collection of early, handmade boxes. Each one is wrapped in that precise, mesmerizing shade of robin's egg blue, presenting a stark and beautiful contrast against the dark, polished mahogany wood. You can see the fine texture of the paper under the low light, the tiny, subtle imperfections in the grain that show it was crafted by human hands rather than by an unfeeling machine. Beside these boxes lies a heavy spool of deep, lustrous silk ribbon. As a pair of gentle hands reaches out to cut a length of the ribbon, a soft, dry whisper echoes through the quiet room. Lat-sat, lat-hat-sat, a sound as delicate as dry autumn leaves scraping across a stone courtyard, folded over itself with an unhurried sacred that feels almost sacred. There is a deliberate calmness in this simple act, a slow-motion choreography of domestic elegance. The silk catches the low golden light of the candle flame, its glossy surface shining like still water in the moonlight, while the matte blue box beneath it remains perfectly calm, absorbing the warmth of the room. As you watch the ribbon being tied into a slow, perfect bow, let your own mind slow down with it. If this quiet world we are exploring together brings a sense of comfort to your evening, please feel free to gently support this peaceful space by clicking the like button or subscribing to Whispers of Centuries. Your quiet presence here is a wonderful addition to our nightly journeys, a soft reminder that we are all seeking a small sanctuary from the noisy demands of life. Just like the ribbon wrapping gently around the blue box, let these words "Ver kepra appear" around your thoughts, keeping you safe and warm in the dark. There is never any rush here, just a space to drift. The bow is completed with a soft final tug, the loops of satin settling perfectly against the greenish-blue paper. The sound of the fabric sliding against itself is a tiny, comforting click. Lack-cack, a miniature rhythm that marks a moment of pure creation. In the Victorian era, receiving a package wrapped in this precise manner was an emotional experience long before the box was ever opened to reveal the shimmering silver or gold inside. The exterior itself delivered a profound psychological message. It told the recipient that they were cared for, that someone had taken the time to seek out the rarest, most beautiful colour in the city just for them. The box became a vessel of quiet affection, a physical manifestation of a slow and thoughtful relationship. The faint scent of rich vanilla perfume and dried rose petals floats gently in the air, mixing with the earthy smell of the paper and the wax. Everything in this room is designed to insulate you, to keep the chaos of the outside world far away. You watch the shadow of the ribbon bow dance softly against the wall as the candle flame wavers in a faint breeze. The night is expanding, welcoming you to lay down your worries, to let go of the need to understand or achieve, and to simply exist in this beautiful, slow-moving archive of colour and grace. Leaving the quiet elegance of the dressing room behind, we step deeper into the secretive, shadow-filled world of the old jeweller-esque workshop, where the very essence of this iconic colour is matched and mirrored in the physical weight of precious minerals. The air here is cool, dense and thick, with the grounding aroma of pumice powder, fine olive oil used for lubrication, and the faint, sweet scent of natural beeswax. This is a sanctuary of ultimate precision, hidden away from the busy Manhattan streets, insulate the distant rumble of the outer walls that absorb the distant rumble of the outer world. On a long oil-stained workbench made of dark walnut wood, a single oil lamp flickers softly, casting warm, elongated shadows and shiny silver chisels and shallow leather trays. Inside one of these trays lies a small collection of raw, unpolished turquoise stones, sourced from ancient, quiet veins deep within the earth. Their surfaces are rough and matte, covered in a fine layer of pale dust, yet beneath that weathered exterior lies the exact, mesmerizing shade of greenish-blue that Charles Tiffany has chosen to define his empire. You reach out and pick up a single piece of turquoise, feeling its cool, surprisingly substantial weight rest against the palm of your hand. The stone feels like a fragment of a frozen winter sky, solid and unyielding, carrying a quiet energy that's to form beneath the weight of years, beneath the weight of mountains. You bring the stone to a flat lapidary wheel, a heavy disc of solid stone turned slowly by a manual your foot treadle. The movement is entirely meditative, steady and meditative. As you press the rough turquoise against the wet, rotating surface of the wheel, a low, consistent murmur fills the room, a soft, watery hiss that speaks of patience and transformation. Tiny droplets of water fly off the wheel, catching the golden lantern light like miniature shooting stars, before vanishing into the shadows. With each slow, deliberate pass, the rough edges of the stone begin to soften, worn away by the gentle friction of the wheel. The raw texture disappears, giving way to a smooth, domed surface that is incredibly pleasant to the touch. You pause the wheel, lifting the stone to inspect your progress, and wipe the moisture away with a scrap of soft linen fabric. The fabric makes a delicate, whispering rustle. Latsat, latsat, a clean textile sound that emphasizes the absolute quiet of the workshop. Now the true beauty of the mineral is revealed. The turquoise glistens under the oil lamp, showing a perfectly uniform sky blue surface woven with tiny, delicate lines of dark brown matrix, a natural signature that ensures no two stones will ever be completely identical. You place the polished stone into a small wooden tray alongside the others, where they sit like a clutch of rare eggs. In a hidden nest, they produce a tiny musical sound, a clear, solid click that repeats with a rhythmic regularity, lak-hak, over and over again. This sound is small, but in the absolute silence of the midnight workshop, it becomes a powerful anchor for the mind. It acts like an ancient physical metronome, a slow and steady timekeeper that does not measure the frantic hours of the business world, but rather the quiet artistic progression of a masterpiece. Each tiny click, lack, cack, seems to gently push away the lingering anxieties of the day, lowering your pulse and slowing your breathing until your entire body is synchronized with the unhurried rhythm of the laboratory. There is a profound philosophy hidden within this work. Men out in the city are building giant engines and tearing up the earth to create wealth, but here in the dark, you are taking a piece of the earth and gently coaxing it into an object of timeless contemplation. The polished turquoise stones are identical in spirit to the printed covers of the Blue Book. Both are physical anchors meant to bring the absolute purity of nature into a society that is rapidly losing its connection to the wild. You reach for a small bottle of fine leather oil, pouring a single drop onto a piece of chamois cloth to give the stones their final brilliant luster. The movement of your hands is fluid and relaxed, completely free of the pressure of time. The night is old, the city is silent, and your mind is completely at peace, wrapped in the soothing metronome-like rhythm of the stones and the soft golden light of the lamp. As the polished stones rest silently in their velvet-lined trays, the true power of this bound-the-walls blue colour begins to ripple far beyond the walls of the workshop. It enters the very psyche of 19th century society. In the grand parlours and crowded ballrooms of New York's elite, a subtle but undeniable shift is taking place. It is a quiet phenomenon of human psychology, the collective desire to find meaning, identity and status within a single, specific shade of colour. In an era where vast fortunes are being made overnight in steel, railroads and shipping, the old markers of aristocracy are dissolving. Anyone with enough money can buy gold, anyone can build a massive stone mansion, and so the truly refined search for something far more elusive, a marker of taste that cannot simply be bought with raw wealth, but must be understood through a delicate shed sensibility blue, becomes that very marker. It is a visual password. It is a visual password, a silent declaration that the owner possesses an eye for the pure, the rare and the understated. To hold a package wrapped in this colour is to instantly elevate oneself above the noisy, chaotic scramble of the common marketplace. Let yourself sink a little deeper into the safety of your surroundings. Feel the quiet weight of history washing over you. There is nothing you need to accomplish tonight. With no status to prove, no roles to fulfill, you are simply a silent observer of the history, safely tucked away in the dark. Outside the tall window of a quiet townhouse, the carriage lamps flicker through the evening mist, casting long, wet reflections across the dark cobblestones. Inside, a gentleman sits at his writing desk, dipping a fine steel nib into a small well of dark ink. The only sound is the rhythmic, slow scratch of the pen against a thick cotton calling card. Lat-sat, lat-sat, a slow, consistent whisper that tracks the motion of his thoughts. He is writing an invitation, a private note to a close circle of friends, and on the corner of his desk rests a small blue box. The presence of that colour in the room changes the entire atmosphere. It anchors the space in a quiet luxury that feels both ancient and modern. Social historians look back at this moment as the birth of a new kind of social psychology, where a colour from nature is transformed into a psychological mirror, reflecting a society's deepest longings for order, beauty and exclusion. The human mind naturally seeks patterns, and in the 19th century, this specific pattern of turquoise became synonymous with ultimate grace. People do not just want the jewellery inside, they want the feeling that comes with the colour itself. a feeling of complete safety from the industrial chaos, a sense of belonging to an idealized world of perfect aesthetics. The grandfather clock in the corner ticks with a deep hollow resonance. Latch-cack. Latch-cack, a steady, unhurried pulse that reminds us how fleeting human anxieties are, yet how enduring these small artifacts of beauty remain. The ink on the writing desk dries slowly, losing its wet sheen to become a permanent record of an evening spent in quiet contemplation. Your mind is free to release the need to belong, the need to achieve. You are warm, you are still, and the soft blue night carries you deeper into rest. The deep, velvety darkness of the late night hours has fully enveloped the grand mansion, and the busy energy of the day has completely faded into a distant memory. In the long, quiet hallways of the estate, the only movement comes from the silent, rhythmic footsteps of a housemaid, performing completely surrenders to sleep. Before the house completely surrenders to sleep, her soft leather slippers pad gently across the thick wool runners, producing a faint, barely audible sound, lat-sat, slat-sat, a rhythmic whisper that feels like a gentle breathing pattern, woven into the very fabric of the house. She moves from room to room with an unhurried, graceful precision, carrying a small silver tray that holds the evening's final, precious deliveries. There is no urgency in her stride, no rush to finish, only the calm, meditative flow of a routine perfected through years of quiet service. She enters the master bedroom suite, where a single candle burns low on a magnificent heavy mahogany dressing table. The air in the room is warm and comforting, smelling faintly of sweet almond oil, expensive French milled soap, and the deep, resinous scent of the old polished wood. The dark mahogany surface of the table behaves like a dark mirror, catching the flickering golden light of the candle and stretching it into long, soft reflections that dance across the room. With a steady, gentle hand, she lifts a small handmade box from the silver tray. It is that exact hypnotic shade of robin's egg blue, a vibrant but perfectly calm turquoise that seems to carry its own internal serenity. She sets it down upon the dark, red-brown grain of the mahogany. The paper-wrapped box meets the solid wood with a tiny, muted sound, a soft, satisfying click, lack-cack, that marks the completion of its journey. The visual contrast is breathtaking. The cool, natural purity of the blue box stands out beautifully against the warm, deep shadows of the ancient wood, looking like a rare jewel dropped onto the forest-floored floor. The maid pauses for a brief moment, her eyes resting on the perfect alignment of the box alongside crystal perfume bottles and delicate lace handkerchiefs and delicate hair chairs. She adjusts the placement by a mere fraction of an inch, her fingertips brushing against the textured paper cover with a soft, dry scrape, sat, making sure it sits exactly where her mistress will find it upon waking. There is a profound sense of peace in this tiny act of domestic care, a slow, deliberate arrangement of beauty designed to welcome the morning with a feeling of absolute safety and elegance. The housemaid steps back into the shadows, her presence dissolving into the quiet corners of the room as she moves toward the doorway. Her departure is as silent as her arrival, leaving the dressing table in absolute stillness. The candle flame wavers gently as a soft draft moves through the room, causing the long shadow of the blue box to stretch and bend against the floral wallpaper. You can feel the heavy protective weight of the mansion architecture all around you, the thick brick walls, the massive oak floorboards, the heavy velvet drapes that shut out the cold, wet air of the New York night. Inside this room, everything is perfectly preserved, completely insulated from the loud, demanding modern world that waits beyond the gates. Your mind is allowed to drift into this state of perfect arrangement, where every object has its place and every sound is a gentle lullaby designed to ease your thoughts. The ticking of a small mantel clock across the room provides a slow, predictable metronome, lack-cack, lack-cack, counting down the quiet hours of the night in a way that feels deeply grounding. You are warm, you are safe, and the pristine blue box rests on the dark wood, a quiet sentinel of grace waiting silently for the dawn. The soft amber sunlight of a late Manhattan afternoon filters through the heavy glass panes of a private library, casting long golden bars across the rows of leather-bound books and the deep green velvet of the armchairs. The room is entirely silent, a peaceful sanctuary, suspended high above the bustling streets of New York. In this quiet space, a heavy mahogany writing desk stands as the center of a slow, beautiful ritual. Resting upon its polished surface is a sheet of fine ivory-colored laid paper, its edges slightly deckled and rough to the touch. A hand reaches out, holding a delicate glass-dipping pen, its spiraled tip catching the warm light like a tiny shard of ice. The pen is lowered into a small, elegant inkwell, filled not capite, hat ordinary black ink, but with a specially blended, vibrant turquoise fluid that perfectly mirrors the iconic robin's egg blue of Charles Tiffany's vision. The nib meets the paper with a slow, deliberate scratch, lat-sat, lat-sat, creating a gentle rhythmic sound that feels through the empty library. Each line of cursive script flows gracefully across the page, the wet blue ink glistening faintly before the paper absorbs it, turning it into a permanent, elegant record of private thoughts. There is no haste in this writing. Every letter is formed with a calm, philosophical precision, allowing the mind to slow down and focus entirely on the physical beauty of the act. The letter is an intimate invitation, a message sent from one quiet home to another, carrying with it the visual language of the heiress. New aesthetic standard. When the page is full, the pen is set down upon a small porcelain rest with a tiny, delicate sound, lack-cack, a soft click that signals the completion of the message. The writer folds the heavy paper slowly, creasing the edges with the smooth side of a bone folder, creating a clean, sharp fold that whispers of high-quality craftsmanship. Now comes the final, most satisfying step of the ritual. A stick of hard sealing wax, tinted in that exact, mesmerizing shade of greenish-blue, is held over the tiny dancing flame of a spirit lamp. The wax warms slowly, its outer edges softening and beginning to glisten under the heat. A faint, sweet scent of burning pine resin and beeswax rises into the air, filling the room with a comforting, grounding aroma that makes the space feel even safer and more enclosed. A single heavy drop of molten blue wax falls onto the back of the envelope, followed by another, making a tiny soft pattering sound against the paper. Before the wax can cool and harden, a heavy brass signet stamp is pressed firmly into the pool of turquoise. The cold metal cools the wax instantly. And as the stamp is lifted away, it leaves behind a perfect raised seal, a flawless protective emblem of absolute elegance. The envelope now bears the unmistakable signature of refined taste, a small portable token of the Robin-S egg blue craze that is quietly binding the society together. The letter will be carried by a courier through the quiet, fading light of the afternoon, arriving at its destination as a beautiful surprise. To receive such a letter was to understand, without opening it, that the message inside belonged to a world of elevated grace and pure aesthetics. You look at the completed letter resting on the desk, its blue seal standing out like a small jewel in the darkening room. The afternoon is fading into twilight, and the shadows are growing longer, softening the sharp edges of the furniture and wrapping the library in a warm protective embrace. And your mind feels completely unburdened, drifting away from the complex thoughts of the day, fully anchored in the slow, rhythmic scratch of the pen and the sweet smell of the wax. You are warm, you are still, and the quiet blue night begins to close its eyes around you. The evening deepens further, as the quiet letter is set aside and the philosophical weight of this beautiful colour begins to settle into the very fabric of 19th century life. What started as a simple choice from a naturalist's notebook has now transformed entirely. It is no longer just a shade of ink or a coating on a piece of paper. It has evolved into a powerful wordless social language, a silent code of refinement that speaks across crowded rooms without ever uttering a single sound. In the rigid, formal world of old New York, where every gesture is measured and every word carefully chosen, this specific shade of greenish-blue offers a rare space of pure, unspoken understanding. To see this colour gracing a mantelpiece, a jewellery box, or a subtle ribbon is to instantly understand a set of shared values of peace, of absolute clarity, and of a deep reverence for the pristine beauty of a world before the machine. You rest your head back against the soft, high back of the velvet armchair, feeling the gentle warmth of the dying fire radiate against your skin. The wood smoke from the hearth carries a rich, comforting aroma, a deep, earthy scent of cured maple and dry oak that fills the room with an ancient sense of safety. Outside, a carriage rolls past on the distant avenue, its iron wheels making a soft, rhythmic rumble that fades away into the misty night like a wave receding from the shore. Inside, the silence is thick and protective. You watch the tiny embers in the fireplace shift and settle, making a faint musical click. Lack-cack, lack-cack, a miniature sound that underscores the absolute stillness of the house. Every object in this room seems to participate in this silent conversation of taste. The robin's egg blue box on the table does not cry out for attention. It sits quietly in the shadows, its matte surface catching enough ambient light to remind you of its presence. It is a psychological anchor, a steady point of calm in a world that is spinning faster and faster each day. When a guest enters a room and their eyes fall upon that distinctive hue, an unspoken connection is instantly made. There is no need for grand introductions or boastful displays of wealth. The colour does it all, whispering of a shared sophistication that is both elegant and deeply grounded. You reach out to turn the page of an old leather-bound volume resting on your lap, the heavy parchment making a dry rhythmic scrape against your fingers. Lat-sat, a soothing, texturized whisper that blends perfectly with the steady breathing of the night. We are learning to see the world through this lens of quiet elegance. Messages are often the ones that are never spoken aloud. The colour has become a shield. The colour has become a beautiful defensive boundary that keeps the noise, the dust, and the frantic hurry of the modern era far away from the sacred peace of the home. Your thoughts begin to untangle, drifting away from the complexities of the waking world, fully embraced by the slow, soothing rhythm of the silent room. You are completely safe, you are warm, and you are allowed to simply exist in this timeless sanctuary of grace. Outside the tall, arched glass windows of the grand mansion, a steady rhythmic rain begins to fall, tapping a soft, hypnotic melody against the heavy panes. It is a continuous, gentle drumming sound that washes over the cobblestone streets below, blurring the sharp, loud lines of the Manhattan landscape into a soft, quiet watercolor landscape. Inside, the room is completely insulated from the damp chill. A great stone fireplace radiates a deep, enveloping warmth that fills every corner of the parlour, chasing away the shadows and creating a small haven of absolute safety. On a small circular tea table made of dark satinwood, a single robin's egg blue box sits directly beneath the soft glow of a shaded silk lamp. It stands as the absolute centerpiece of the room's quiet geography. Around it, the grand room seems to arrange itself in silent reverence. You look at the tiny droplets of water sliding down the exterior of the window pane, tracing unpredictables, slow paths through the condensation. Each drop disappears into the dark frame, while inside the atmosphere remains perfectly dry, perfectly safe. You reach out a hand, your fingers gently grazing the edge of a heavy wool-throw blanket draped over your knees. The fabric responds with a faint, comforting rustle. Lat, sat, lat sat, a soft, dry textile whisper that echoes the gentle sound of the rain outside. There is a profound sense of sanctuary here, a feeling that no matter how hard the rain falls, or how cold the wind blows through the city, the pristine purity of this room and the beautiful colour on the table cannot be touched. The blue box seems to hold a piece of the clean opener captive within its paper walls, a calm reminder of nature. Eternal peace, resting right in front of you. In the Victorian era, this contrast was everything. The world outside was becoming increasingly grey, damp and unpredictable. But this colour remained a constant symbol of flawless, unblemished order. It was a visual refuge for a tired mind. The embers in the hearth settle with a quiet, comforting click. Lack-cack, lack-cack, a miniature sound that punctuates the rhythmic drumming of the rain. You take a deep, slow breath, letting your shoulders sink back into the deep cushions of the armchair. The air smells faintly of old paper, polished wood, and the clean mineral scent of rain carried through the thick masonry walls. Your mind begins to mirror the absolute stillness of the blue box, letting go of the need to think, to plan, or to worry. Everything is exactly as it should be. The rain continues its steady, soothing song outside, while inside, the soft turquoise hue guides you deeper into a state of profound, restorative rest. The world can rush outside in the dark, but in here we simply watch the rain and rest. The rain outside slowly slows to a gentle, rhythmic drizzle as the long Victorian night begins to yield to the deepest hours of the early morning. This era, with all its grand architectures, its rigid social codes, and its desperate longing for the purity of the natural world, is nearing its midnight slumber. Looking back across the decades, we can see how completely this single, unassuming shade of Robiness egg blue came woven into the very subconscious of classical luxury. It was no longer just an aesthetic choice made by a clever merchant in New York. It had become a permanent monument in the history of human taste, a colour that defined how a generation felt about elegance, safety and grace. You sit in the absolute stillness of the parlour, watching the final deep orange embers of the fireplace glow like tiny distant stars against the soot-darkened brick. The metal grate of the hearth cools down slowly, making a tiny metallic whisper, cack, lack-cack, a soft, predictable sound that seems to echo the slow, rhythmic beating of your heart. On the table, the blue box remains perfectly still, a quiet anchor of peace in the dimming room. When we think of the Victorian era, we often think of heavy iron and thick black smoke, but beneath that industrial crust lay a fragile heart that yearned for the untouched beauty of a wild meadow, and this colour was the bridge to that hidden longing. You reach out and gently fold a linen napkin on the tray, the coarse natural fibres making a faint texturized rustle. Lat-sat, lat-sat, a comforting, tactile sound that grounds you completely in the present moment. There is a profound beauty in things that endure, while the fashions of the day change, while dresses grow larger and then smaller, and while empires rise and fall. This specific shade of greenish-blue remains entirely unchanged. It has entered the collective mind as a symbol of things that cannot be corrupted by time or greed. It whispers of a luxury that is quiet, a refinement that is deep, and a peace that is absolute. For the people of old New York, holding an item in this colour was a way to touch a world of perfect harmony, a world where nature and artifice lived in complete agreement. The candle on the mantelpiece burns down to its very base, the small flame dipping low, before disappearing into the pool of melted wax with a soft, final sigh. The room plunges into a deeper, cooler darkness, yet the warmth of the hearth remains, wrapping around you like a protective shield. Your mind is allowed to let go of the history, to let go of the social structures and the psychology of the past. You are simply a traveller, resting in a safe, dark room. The rhythm of the night is slow, the air is clean, and the memory you gently toward a deep restorative sleep. You're soft and steady. Your breathing is soft and steady, a gentle wave that carries away the last remnants of the day's thoughts. Let the quietness of the era settle into your bones. You are warm, you are safe, and the night is yours. The calendar pages turn slowly, as the 19th century gently dissolves into the roaring, fast-paced machinery of the early 20th. The world up on the streets of New York is changing with terrifying speed. Horse-drawn carriages are gradually replaced by the rhythmic chugging of early motor cars, and the skyline begins to reach toward the clouds, with structures of steel and concrete. In this new era of rapid mass production, where almost anything can be distributed at an unprecedented scale, a unique challenge arises for the House of Tiffany. Knowles gasturbte the beautiful robin's egg blue, which had lived for decades as a shared psychological symbol of refinement, faces a modern threat. It is no longer enough for a colour to exist merely in the hearts and minds of high society. It requires a shield made of modern law. We find ourselves stepping away from the soft velvet parlours and entering a quiet, stately office of a master counsellor in Lower Manhattan. The room is filled with a deep, grounding scent of aged leather bindings, cedar wood oil, and the faint, bitter trace of dried black ink. A massive oak desk sits in the centre, catching a solitary beam of morning light that reveals tiny dust motes dancing lazily in the still air. You are here to witness the very beginning of a legal transformation, a moment where art and nature seek the cold, protective embrace of intellectual property law. Your fingers trace the edge of a heavy leather-bound legal ledger, its surface worn and smooth from years of quiet study. You open the ledger, and the thick, heavy pages create a distinct, dry rustle. Lat-sat, lat-sat. A slow and comforting whisper that breaks the heavy silence of the office. This room feels entirely disconnected from the fast-moving 20th century world outside. Here, time is measured not by speed, but by the careful, meticulous phrasing of sentences meant the necessity to protect the heritage of Tiffany & Co.'s is clear. Imitation has become a standard weapon of modern commerce, and without legal boundaries, the sacred greenish-blue shade, copied by lesser diluted, copied lesser brands, and stripped of its quiet magic. A heavy brass clock mounted on the mahogany wall counts the passing resonance. Lack-cack, lack-cack, a rhythmic companion to your thoughts. The lawyer picks up a fine black fountain pen, its gold-plated nib glistening under the light, and unscrews the cap. With precise click, lack-cack, before lowering it to the parchment, the draft begins, a slow, deliberate accumulation of words and clauses, designed to do something that has never been done before, to turn a specific frequency of light, a colour born from a bird's nest. It is a fascinating psychological asset. It is a fascinating psychological transition, the shift from an unspoken social understanding to an unyielding legal monopoly. Let yourself relax into the quiet gravity of this room. Feel the warmth of the space protecting you. There is no rush, no urgency. Just the slow, steady creation of a legal shield that will guard a masterpiece of colour for the next 100 years. The pen strokes are smooth, leaving behind a trail of wet ink that reflects the window's light before fading into a rich, permanent matte finish. Everything in this room is designed to last, to build a fortress around a legacy, and your mind is completely free to rest within this slow, enduring architecture. The process of codification begins. A slow, quiet transition from the ethereal world of natural wonder to the rigorous absolute precision of mathematical definition. To ensure that this legendary Robin S. Egg blue remains perfectly uniform across every ocean and through every changing decade, it must be bound to a number. This is the birth of Pantone 1837, a commercial code named intentionally after the very year Charles Tiffany first opened his doors to the world. In the quiet laboratory of colorists, the atmosphere is heavy with the grounding scent of raw minerals, purified spring water, and the subtle, earthy tang of natural binders. There are no loud machines here, no hurried factory bells, only the slow, rhythmic measuring of rare pigments onto ancient brass scales. You watch a master colorist reach for a small glass vial filled with a concentrated turquoise liquid. His hands move with the absolute steadiness of a clockmaker, a slow, deliberate tilt of the wrist that releases a single perfect drop into a porcelain mixing bowl. The drop falls with a tiny muted splash, a sound that is instantly swallowed by the thick silence of the room. Let your thoughts drift into this world of perfect balance, where every element has an exact weight, and every movement is an act of deep contemplation. You are safe here, lying down in your quiet, dark room, listening to the slow, steady creation of a masterpiece. There is no need to count the hours or worry about the heavy tasks of tomorrow. The numbers we speak of tonight are here only to soothe you, to bring a sense of flawless structure to the resting mind. Let your breathing slow down as we contemplate the beautiful logic of a standardized universe. The colorist picks up a small glass stirring rod, its surface to blend the pigments, moving his hand in a slow circular motion. He begins blend, go again, over and over. The rod makes a faint rhythmic scraping sound against the side of the porcelain bowl. Lack-kick. A steady hypnotic pattern that echoes through the quiet laboratory like a soft metronome. As the pigments marry, the liquid transforms, rising from a deep, dark oceanic blue into that exact comforting hue of the robin's egg. It is an extraordinary marriage of nature and science. By assigning this unique colour to the permanent number 1837, the House of Tiffany creates an indestructible anchor in a world of shifting trends. A number cannot fade. A digital code cannot be altered by the passage of time or the corrupting dust of the earth. It becomes an absolute standard, a universal language of elegance that remains completely independent of human error. You look down at a thick card containing the finalized color chart, running your fingers gently across the matte surface of the printed swatches. The heavy cardstock responds with a soft, dry whisper against your skin. Lat-sat, a textile texture that feels grounding and deeply reassuring. Each square on the page represents a different shade of history, but your eyes always return to 1837, the one true blue that carries the weight of history and the peace of a quiet morning. There is a deep philosophical beauty in this act of naming. It strips away the chaos of subjective description, replacing it with a quiet, unyielding certainty. When a printer in a distant land prepares a new box or a catalogue cover centuries from now, they do not need to guess. They do not need to interpret. They simply look for the number. It is a silent contract of quality, a beautiful shield that protects the legacy from the noisy confusion of the global marketplace. The oil lamp on the laboratory desk flickers gently, casting a warm, golden light across the color chart and the porcelain bowl. The night outside continues its long, dark journey, completely separate from the pristine, balanced world inside these thick brick walls. Your breathing matches the slow, circular motion of the stirring rod a steady, calming tide of air that brings total relaxation to your body and peace to your mind. You are completely insulated, warm, and resting in the perfect, numbered stillness of the night. We return once more to the quietest sanctuary of the old law, a high-ceilinged office tucked deep within a stone building in Lower Manhattan, where the rapid speed of the modern world completely crystallizes into absolute stillness. This is the private room of an old-world counselor, a space that feels entirely untouched by the hurried metallic noise of the early 20th century streets. The room smells of ancient, comforting history, a deep blend of old sheepskin parchment, crumbling calfskin bindings, dried iron gall ink, and the warm, sweet residue of mahogany polish. Here the air is thick and still, trapping the peaceful silence of the late-night hours within its heavy brick walls. A single tall beeswax candle stands on the corner of a massive double pedestal desk, its flame burning steadily and throwing long, soft shadows across the rows of legal texts. You are invited to rest in the deep leather armchair opposite the desk, feeling the cool, supple texture of the hide yield beneath your weight. There is absolutely nothing required of you tonight. Wernoltha feinin yetui, no documents to sign, no decisions to make. You are here simply to watch the law build its quiet wall around a masterpiece of colour. The lawyer, a man of quiet dignity with silver hair that catches the candle's golden halo, adjusts his spectacles with a slow, deliberate movement. He reaches for a clean sheet of heavy legal parchment, its surface slightly rough and uneven, holding the memory of old-world paper mills. He places it squarely on the leather desk blotter, and the paper makes a low, comforting rustle. Lat-sat, lat-sat, a dry, tactile sound that cuts through the stillness of the room like a soft sigh. He selects a heavy black vulcanized rubber fountain pen, its fine gold nib glinting in the dim light. He lowers the pen into a deep crystal inkwell, the metal tip making a faint sharp click against the thick glass rim. Lack, cack, lack, a miniature sound that signals the beginning of a long hypnotic labour. The pen meets the paper, and the rhythmic scratch begins. Lat-sat, lat-sat, a continuous steady whispering that tracks the creation of the legal shield. He writes line after line of dense protective prose, clauses of exclusivity, definitions of proprietary rights, and boundaries of commercial use. The words are formal, old-fashioned, and beautifully timed, describing how no other entity, no other merchant, and no other house may employ this precise frequency of greenish-blue for the purpose of trade. The repetitive motion of the pen becomes a soothing metronome for your thoughts. Dip, lack, cack, write, lat-sat over and over again. The dryness of the legal terms, the repetitive numbers of the statutes, and the long winding sentences of the old laws begin to work their gentle magic on your mind. The complexity of the waking world starts to fade, replaced by the tattered, comforting rhythm of the lawyer's pen. Each clause is like a heavy stone laid in a protective wall, keeping the loud, demanding world far away from the quiet beauty of the Robin-S egg blue. We watch the ink dry on the page, its initial wet luster slowly fading into a rich, permanent matte finish that matches the darkness of the room. The candle burns lower, its wax dripping down the side in a slow, silent cascade, forming a small monument of time spent in perfect stillness. Your breathing synchronizes with the steady rise and fall of the pen. You are warm, you are safe, and the quiet law keeps watch over your night. The lawyer's pen continues its rhythmic journey, drawing your mind deeper into a soothing labyrinth's dusty codices and repetitive tattered legalese. Each line written under the dim candle flame serves a dual purpose. It builds an unbreakable wall of protection around Pantone 1837, and it acts as a gentle, monotonic weight upon your heavy eyelids. The language of the document is intentionally dry, free of any emotional variance or modern urgency. He writes of Section 4, subsection B of the Trademark Registration Act, referencing old precedents from the year 1881. The numbers roll off the page like a slow, unhurried stream of water. Section 12, Volume 74, page 359, over and over, a long rhythmic sequence of data designed to exhaust the analytical faculties of the waking mind. You can hear the steady, dry scrape of the nib moving across the textured linen fibres. Latsat, latsat, a soft, scratchy murmur that feels like a physical massage for your thoughts. Let yourself surrender fully to the beautiful boredom of these legal definitions. There is nothing in these paragraphs that demands your active attention, no problems you need to solve, no complex narratives you need to follow. The legal terms are merely a flat, serene landscape of sound, a protective container keeping you completely isolated from the frantic rush of the outer world. You are safe in this dark room, wrapped in the absolute certainty of the law. The counsellor lifts his left hand to turn a thick page of a reference ledger, the heavy calfskin cover making a deep, satisfying thud against the wood. Lack-cack, followed by the dry, crisp whisper of the old paper sliding past his fingers. Latsat. He dips the fountain pen back into the inkwell, the glass container emitting that familiar, clear click. Lack-cack. Before the writing resues, he defines the geographical boundaries of the protection, extending from the ports of New York to the territories of the Far West, across the Atlantic to the ancient markets of London and Paris. Every single territory is listed by name, a long winding catalogue of places that stretches out into the darkness. The repetition is hypnotic, a continuous loop of formal language that slows your pulse and eases your breathing. The room feels warmer now, books that line the walls from floor to ceiling. I am from floor. They stand like silent, protective guardians of knowledge, their collective weight absorbing all the stray anxieties of the night. You look at the wet line of ink slowly absorbing into the page, watching the light reflect off the dampsters before they turn a quiet matte grey. The work is incredibly slow, a monument to a time when decisions were made with ink, paper, and hours of silent contemplation. The candle flame gives a small, soft dip as the wick curves over, casting a gentle wave. Text is dry, and night is long, the text is dry, and your mind is perfectly free to let go, to drift away into the soothing, numbered depths of the legal archive, where time moves as slow as a stone turning in the deep, quiet earth. The legal codification achieves its ultimate, unyielding form, bringing about a profound philosophical shift in the way humanity interacts with the natural world. As the last clauses are inscribed upon the heavy parchment, a striking paradox becomes reality. A specific, delicate shade of greenish-blue, born originally from the fragile shell of a wild songbird in the untouched forests, has now been transformed into a supreme piece of private property. It is the first time in global legal history that a single colour has been granted its own sovereign borders, an intangible fortress built entirely out of words and statutory decrees. To the modern mind, this concept carries a deep contemplative weight. It reminds us of how human civilization constantly seeks to capture, define, and preserve the fleeting beauty of nature within the rigid structures of society. You lie perfectly still in your bed, your body completely relaxed beneath the comforting weight of your blankets, letting this philosophical truth wash over you like a calm, gentle tide. There is no need to debate it, no need to analyze it. It is simply a beautiful, quiet fact of history resting in the darkness. The old law office has grown completely silent now, save for the very slow, deep breathing of the night. The counsellor has set down his pen, leaving the completed document to dry under the soft amber glow of the single candle. You look at the dark mahogany bookshelves that surround the room, their surfaces holding the wisdom of centuries, all wrapped in quiet, protective shadow. The absolute exclusivity of the colour means that from this day forward, the Robin's Egg Blue belongs exclusively to the legacy of Charles Tiffany. No other house, no other printer, and no other merchant can use this hue to market their wares. It has been lifted out of the common world, set apart as a sacred emblem of a specific heritage. The silence in the room feels heavy and protective, a thick barrier that keeps the frantic, competitive noise of the 20th century play far away from your sanctuary. You can hear the faint, comforting rustle of the parchment as the air currents in the room gently touch the edges of the dried document. Latsat, a soft, dry textile whisper that sounds like a gentle sigh of relief from the page itself. The ink has completely settled into the fibres, turning into a permanent matte black record of an extraordinary achievement. The heavy brass clock on the wall continues its slow, unhurried march. Lack-cack, a steady metronome that anchors the room in a state of absolute peaceful timelessness. Each click is a gentle reminder that the work is finished, the colour is safe, and your mind is now completely free to surrender its final thoughts. You are insulated from the demands of the waking world, warm in your bed, and allowed to drift into the deep, protective quiet of a night that knows exactly how to preserve its most beautiful secrets. The heavy leather-bound folders are gathered into a neat pile, and the absolute quiet of the legal sanctuary deepens as the late-night hours transition into the early dawn. Inside the high-ceilinged office, the counsellor begins the slow, methodical process of archiving the finalised documents for Pantone 1837. Each movement of his hands is measured, a deliberate pacing that honours the gravity of the legal fortress he has just constructed. He reaches for a thick bundle of supporting exhibits, the ancient linen ribbon bindings producing a soft dry scrape against the polished walnut desk. Latsat, a textile whisper that fills the empty room with a sense of historic weight. Outside the tall arched windows, the autumn wind rises, sweeping through the narrow stone canyons of lower Manhattan. It rattles the old wooden frames gently, making a low rhythmic whistling sound that acts as a soothing background melody to the silence within. Inside you are completely warm, completely safe, tucked away from the cold drafts under a thick blanket of peace. The lawyer lifts a massive stack of legal briefs, his fingers feeling the textured density of the cotton rag paper. As he slowly turns each page to verify the official court stamps, the paper creates a deep, resonant rustle. Latsat, a continuous, comforting loop of sound that mimics the gentle rustle of dry leaves in an undisturbed forest. There is no rush to complete this filing. Every document must be placed in its exact chronological order, secured heavy brass fasteners that click softly against one another. Lack-cack, over and over again. This repetitive metallic clinking becomes a rhythmic anchor for your wandering thoughts, drawing your mind away from the complex anxiety of the modern world and grounding you in the slow, mechanical beauty of the past. The office smells of old paper dust, cedar shavings, and the rich protective aroma of oil-treated leather, a sensory cocoon that isolates you completely from the noisy demands of the waking world. Through the frosted glass pane of the door, the rest of the building is dark and entirely still. The frantic pace of the early 20th century city, with its new electric lights and bustling stock exchanges, cannot penetrate this thick stone vault. Here, the preservation of Charles Tiffany's iconic blue is treated with the reverence of a sacred relic. The lawyer places the complete thick file into a heavy iron cabinet. The drawer sliding closed verketbite, a low, muffled hum followed by the solid, definitive click of the lock turning, lashkak. The colour is officially locked away in the archives of history, protected from the dilution of time and the greed of competitors. You watch the candle flame throw its final, long shadows across the dark wood panels of the room, feeling a deep sense of closure and relief. The legal work is finished, the files are resting in the dark, and your mind is completely unburdened. You are free to let go of the numbers, the clauses, and the history. Letting the slow rhythmic song of the wind carry you deeper into a profound, restorative sleep. The ultimate monopoly of this singular hue now manifests as a tangible reality across the entire printing and manufacturing landscape, a silent, invisible boundary that reshapes the creative choices of thousands of artisans. In the wake of the legal codification, the world of commerce must adjust to a new kind of spatial law, one where a specific wavelength of light is off limits to the public. Imagine standing inside a completely different workshop on a quiet, foggy evening in Lower Manhattan, a place where ordinary labels, common newspapers, and standard commercial boxes are produced. The master printer here moves with the same slow, unhurried cadence that defines the late-night hours. He reaches for his wooden specimen book, a thick, heavy volume that catalogues every shade of ink available to his clients. As his calloused fingers turn the thick, coarse pages, a dry, rhythmic whisper echoes through the still room. Lat-sat, a soft, fibrous sound that grounds the mind in the physical weight of paper. He scans the rows of colour blocks. There are vibrant ochres, deep madder reds, dark Prussian blues, and heavy charcoal greys. But as his eyes pass over the section where the bright, clean colours of spring should reside, there is an intentional, striking absence. The exact greenish-blue of the robin's egg is nowhere to be found. It has been completely erased from the public domain. A colour that once belonged strictly to the open meadows and wild nests is now a private sanctuary, completely out of reach for ordinary trade. This absolute exclusivity creates a fascinating psychological space. When a customer sees that specific turquoise shade to anywhere in the world, there is no confusion, no hesitation. Their mind instantly bridges the gap to the house of Tiffany. The colour has become an unyielding fortress of identity. To ensure this absolute purity is maintained, the official formula cards for Pantone 1837 are locked away in specialised safes far from the prying eyes of competitors. In the quiet laboratory, a worker places the metal key into the heavy lock of the archive cabinet, turning it with a slow, deliberate twist. The mechanism responds with a deep, satisfying click. Latch-cack, a solid metallic resonance that underscores the absolute finality of the law. No one may print it, no one may dye silk with it, no one may paint a storefront in its likeness without the explicit written blessing of the corporate estate. It is a supreme level of luxury, defined not by what is added, but by what is strictly forbidden to others. You lie safely in your warm room, letting the absolute certainty of this protection verkep roa-pay around your thoughts, like a thick, protective shield. The world is full of chaotic, unregulated noise, but within the story of this colour, everything is perfectly ordered, perfectly secure. The printer sets his specimen book down on the sturdy workbench, the heavy cover meeting the wood with a soft, muted thud. He extinguishes the small oil lamp on his desk, and the shadows instantly expand to fill the room, wrapping the ink jars and the silent press beds in a blanket of peaceful darkness. The night takes full control of the city, and your mind is completely free to let go of the day, sinking deeper into the calm, quiet reality of a world where beauty is fiercely and beautifully guarded. Your breathing remains slow, further into eased, a quiet tide that carries you further into rest. The global understanding of commerce and wealth undergo a profound, revolutionary shift during the latter half of the 20th century as the industrial world begins to realize our assets are no longer made of heavy steel, vast factories, or physical machinery, but are instead woven entirely out of intangible dreams, psychological identity, and pure emotional resonance. This era marks the definitive birth of modern branding, a sophisticated landscape where a single unyielding visual frequency can carry more value than an entire mountain of raw gold. The old ledger books of the corporate world, once filled only with the weights of physical commodities and the costs of raw materials, must now adapt to a new kind of metaphysical calculus. Inside a quiet boardroom high above the changing city, a group of senior executives sits around a massive table of their heritage, reviewing the intangible equity of their heritage. A clerk slowly opens a heavy leather-bound portfolio containing the global valuation reports, the thick vellum pages turning with a deep, dry whisper. Lat sat, a soft, rhythmic friction that speaks of immense institutional memory and quiet power. They look at the balance sheets, but their eyes are drawn to a single concept. The absolute, untouchable equity of Pantone 1837. The world has finally learned that you cannot easily copy an emotion, nor can you counterfeit a legacy that has been flawlessly preserved for generations. When a human being looks at that specific greenish-blue hue, they are not merely observing a colour, they are instantly experiencing a century of romance, a profound sense of trust, the wall sky, and the ultimate standard of craftsmanship. To solidify this intangible fortress, the company initiates meticulous global compliance protocols, ensuring that every manufacturing plant across the continent adheres to the exact same molecular formula. A technician seals a fresh batch of master color swatches, the heavy metal stamping machine coming down with a precise, satisfying snap. Lacquer, lacquer, lacquer. A solid, definitive note that guarantees absolute uniformity across the entire globe. The mindset of the entire world has changed forever. Luxury is no longer defined by the weight of the object, but by the pristine, untouchable purity of the symbol that encapsulates it. You lie perfectly still in the deep comfort of your quiet room, letting your mind absorb this absolute sense of order, feeling completely secure in a world where true value is fiercely guarded by the highest standards of human devotion. Your breathing remains slow, even and deeply tranquil as the night deepens around you. The grand legal archives and historical codifications of the mid-20th finally draw to a close, bringing a profound sense of resolution to the long, absolute finality, to the long, complex journey of protecting Charles Tiffany's sacred vision. Inside the high-ceilinged sanctuary of the old New York law office, the late-night hours have completely consumed the evening, leaving the room wrapped in a dense, velvety silence that feels entirely detached from the passage of time. The counselor sits quietly at his heavy walnut desk, his long work finished, his hands moving with the slow, deliberate charters, the final executed deeds, the official corporate charters, and the Supreme Court decrees into a single, massive bundle. He reaches for a long spool of ancient linen ribbon, wrapping it tightly around the thick stack of papers to secure them for the next century. The dry fabric creates a low, rhythmic rustling sound against the smooth wood. Lat-sat, a comforting, tactile, the legal fortress that marks the official closing of the legal fortress. Within these finalized pages is woven into the narrative fabric, serving as an important declaration for all compoet, for all who seek this quiet space. This historical account and narrative journey is crafted solely for the purpose of deep relaxation and psychological tranquility. Offering no formal legal or financial counsel, acting merely as a soothing companion for your weary mind as the waking world fades away. The lawyer lifts his heavy brass seal, pressing it firmly into a pool of warm crimson at the base of the documents, the metal meeting the desk with a faint, solid tap. Lack, cack, lack, a miniature note of absolute finality that echoes softly through the empty, shadows-drenched room. The great legal battle is won. The colour is officially insulated from the chaos of time and the greed of the world, resting safely in the dark iron vaults of history. The lawyer looks at the single candle remaining on his desk, its flame flickering gently. As the wick burns down to its very end, the light grows smaller and smaller, casting long, peaceful shadows across the dark wood panels, before finally dissolving into a quiet, warm darkness. The office sinks completely into the deep rest of the night, entirely safe and undisturbed. Let your own thoughts dissolve along with the fading candle, letting go of every law, every word, and every modern anxiety. You are completely warm, completely protected, and allowed to sink effortlessly into a beautiful, restorative sleep. The relentless river of time glides smoothly forward, dissolving the decades and centuries until the world wakes up in the vibrant landscape of the absolute present day. New York City has transformed completely, shifting from the grey, coal-dusted streets of 1845 into a soaring, hyper-modern metropolis dominated by colossal towers of structural glass and polished architectural steel that scrape the very edge of the clouds. The ancient low-ceilinged print shops of Lower Manhattan, with their heavy smell of mineral oil, coarse cotton paper, and manually driven copper rollers, have long since vanished into the footnotes of history, replaced by pristine, climate-controlled corporate headquarters and digital design laboratories down on the vast avenues below. The chaotic rush of contemporary life moves, a never-ending stream of roaring traffic and bustling crowds. Yet, as you watch this modern world from the quiet security of a high-rise sanctuary, you realize that some things remain completely untouched by the frantic pace of human progress. A design director sits at a sleek, minimalist obsidian table inside the Brand S contemporary design studio, holding a pristine, newly manufactured sample of the iconic blue pen. As her gloved hand gently adjusts the sample, the specialized paper creates a faint, crisp texture of sound. Lat-sat, lat-sat, a familiar, timeless whisper that bridges the gap between the past and the future. She opens a modern, secure titanium briefcase containing modern Pantone 1837 color keys. The heavy electronic lock disengages with a sharp, precise click. Lack-cack, lack-cack, a high-tech echo of the same metallic security that has guarded this color for nearly 2 centuries. Even though the city outside has changed beyond all recognition, the exact frequency of light reflecting off that paper sample is precisely identical to the color that Charles Tiffany fell in love with in the open meadows of the 19th century. The ancient soul of the brand remains fully intact, standing as an unyielding monument of elegance amidst a world of constant temporary change. Your mind finds a deep sense of grounding in this absolute permanence, letting the chaotic noise of the modern century fade away into a soft, meaningless murmur. You are perfectly safe, perfectly still, wrapped in the comforting knowledge that true beauty never fades. The complex corporate landscape of the 21st century witnesses massive shifts in global power, culminating in the ultimate transition of the historic House of Tiffany into the grand stewardship of LVMH, the world's supreme luxury conglomerate. This monumental acquisition brings together the ancient heritage of New York craftsmanship and the sophisticated, unparalleled mastery of Parisian luxury governance. In the high-stakes boardrooms of Paris and Manhattan, billions of dollars change hands, corporate structures are drawn with, and international portfolios are reorganized under the watchful eyes of the world's financial capitals. Yet, amidst this titanic restructuring, a sacred directive completely absolute and entirely non-negotiable. The core identity, the historic purity, and the precise molecular definition of Pantone, 1837 moetier, never be altered, diluted, or compromised by even a single micron. The new guardians of the estate treat the colour with the exact same reverence that an ancient temple treats its most sacred relic. Inside a modern executive suite overlooking the scene, a senior creative director reviews the glossy, heavyweight financial and aesthetic reports for the upcoming global collections. As he turns the smooth premium pages of the strategy dossier, the paper produces a luxurious, heavy rustle. Latsat, latsat, a sound that reflects the immense weight of modern capital and cultural influence. The cap meeting the barrel with a soft, expensive click. The cap meeting the barrel with a soft, expensive click. Lack, cack, bump, lack, cack. A precise aristocratic note that marks the approval of the grand preservation strategy. The global empire of luxury may expand, markets may shift across new continents, but the visual soul of the robin's egg blue remains completely immutable, standing strong against the currents of modern corporate change. The colour stands as a symbol of absolute stability, a timeless anchor that connects the ultra-modern consumer to a heritage of pure, unadulterated grace. You can feel the immense protective power of this globe around your thoughts, reassuring you that everything is perfectly manageable, built to endure forever. Your breath slows down to match the grand, steady rhythm of this enduring history, allowing your mind to rest in total peace. Within the grand strategy of this enduring empire, there exists an absolute, unyielding rule that has remained strictly unbroken since the days of Charles Tiffany himself, a sacred mandate regarding the physical manifestation of the colour that defines the brand. This is the famous uncompromising law of the empty box. A Tiffany blue box is never, under any circumstances, permitted to be sold, traded, or given away on its own as a solitary piece of merchandise, no matter how much money a customer might offer, no matter how powerful their social status or how desperate their request. The boutique specialists are trained to deliver a polite, completely immovable refusal. The iconic box cannot be bought with currency. It can only be obtained as a sacred accompaniment to a timeless vow of token of art, or a timeless vow of romantic devotion. This strict philosophy elevates the box from a mere piece of consumer packaging into a literal physical sanctuary of human emotion. Imagine walking into the quiet, luxurious atmosphere of the boutique late in the afternoon, where the air is scented veikep hat, white tea, and fresh orchids. A specialist is preparing a special delivery, carefully placing a rare diamond engagement ring inside its black velvet case, before enveloping it within the structural walls of the turquoise box. The soft, fine tissue paper inside settles. Veikep hat, a delicate, whisper-like sigh. Latsat, a textile friction that signifies the absolute gentleness of the craft. The specialist lowers the lid of the jewellery case, the inner spring mechanism closing with a tiny perfect snap. Lack-cack, a miniature note of absolute security. The box is then wrapped in a flawless white satin ribbon, completing the visual icon. The box belongs exclusively to the story of love and the pursuit of ultimate beauty. It is a physical boundary that sacred moments of your world from the sacred moments of human life. As you rest in the warmth of your own sanctuary, you can appreciate the beautiful, strict order of this philosophy, letting your mind let go of the transactional demands of the waking world. You are not for sale, your peace is absolute, and you are allowed to rest in the pure, unshared quiet of the night. The final hour of operation has long since passed at the magnificent flagship store on Fifth Avenue, and the grand temple of luxury of absolute, reverent repose. Hi, welcome the tens of thousands of visitors who walk through the massive Art Deco doors during the day have departed, leaving the vast marble halls completely empty and beautifully still. The soft golden ambient security lights cast long, elegant shadows across the polished white stone floors, reflecting off the dark walnut counters and the massive expanses of reinforced structural glass. A senior display specialist moves silently across the deep carpeted paths, performing the final sacred ritual of the day. He approaches the central vitrine, where a single perfect robin's egg blue box sits beneath the fading spotlights. With extreme care, his white-gloved hands lift the box, using a soft microfiber cloth to gently polish the surrounding glass showcase to ensure not a single speck of dust remains. The cloth moves over the smooth surface with a rhythmic, hypnotic whisper, sat, sat, lat, sat, a clean, soothing sound that marks the transition from the busy commerce of the day to the deep peace of the night. He places the iconic box back into its exact geometric center, aligning it perfectly with the midnight architecture of the store. He closes the heavy plate glass door of the showcase, the specialized brass lock engaging with a deep, satisfying and resonant click. Lack-cack. Lack-cack. Count. A solid metallic finality that echoes through the vast empty spaces of the grand main floor. The last box of the day is now safely put to rest, locked away in its pristine glass vault, completely protected from the world until the next dawn. The entire building seems to exhale a long, quiet sigh of relief, sinking into a state of total, undisturbed security. Let your own eyes grow heavy as you visualize the silent, magnificent store standing guard in the heart of the city. The work is done, the beautiful objects are resting in the dark, and your mind is now entirely free to sink deeper and deeper into a profound, beautifully guarded sleep. The grand, sweeping architecture of the Fifth Avenue flagship store now enters its final, most sacred phase of the night, transitioning from a bustling monument of global commerce into a completely silent sanctuary of absolute stillness. The display specialist, having ensured that every iconic robin's egg blue box is perfectly aligned within its glass vault, steps back onto the deep, plush carpeted runners that line the grand main floor. His footsteps make absolutely no sound, completely swallowed by the heavy premium fibers of the textile underfoot as he walks toward the massive full ornamental master control station behind the main counters. Here, a specialized set of historical brass keys rests inside a concealed wooden cabinet, each key intricately cut and polished by the smooth touch of multiple generations of guardians. He reaches out his hand, his fingers closing around the cold, dense metal of the master key that controls the heavy internal security gates and the main vault locks. He inserts the heavy key into the ancient, beautifully maintained lock cylinder, turning it with a slow, deliberate, not practiced rotation that requires the full weight of his wrist. The internal tumblers, forged from solid iron and thick brass, slide smoothly, incredibly warm, and resonant click through the empty echoes through the empty, cavernous multi-story atrium. Lack-cack. Lack-cack, a magnificent heavy sound that signals the definitive closing of the internal fortress. Following this initial lock, the specialist moves toward the great front entrance, where the monumental Art Deco doors stand as a barrier between the quiet luxury inside and the restless energy of the New York night. He pulls a heavy velvet protective drape across precious items from the morning sun, the thick, luxurious fabric sliding along its brass track with a soft, continuous and soothing rustle. Lat-sat, a dry textile whisper that sounds like a gentle wave washing over a smooth sand beach. He then engages the massive deadbolts on the main doors, turning the final deadbolt with a slow twist. Lak-kak, lak-kak, a final, solid, and completely unyielding metallic note that marks the absolute completion of the daily cycle. The space instantly sinks into a state of total, undisturbed isolation. The outside world, with its flashing lights and distant sirens, is completely cut off, and able to penetrate to granite walls and the heavily reinforced glass of this timeless temple. The air inside becomes perfectly still, cool and beautifully tranquil, holding the lingering sense of polished walnut wood, fine leather, and the crisp cleanliness of freshly pressed linen. Not a single shadow moves, not a single light flickers. Every single piece of silver, every masterfully cut diamond, and every single box of Pantone 1837 rests in total uncompromised safety, wrapped in the deep, protective blanket of the midnight hour. You can feel the profound weight of this absolute silence spreading through your own consciousness, reassuring you that everything in the world is safely locked away, perfectly ordered, and completely at peace. There are no more doors to lock, no more duties to perform, and no more movements to make. Your mind is entirely free to let go of the day, sinking into the same beautiful undisturbed stillness that now completely governs the grand store. Your breathing remains remarkably slow, steady, and deep, a quiet rhythmic tide that carries you further away from the waking world and into the deep dark sanctuary of rest. The grand quiet narrative of the untouchable robin's egg blue now gently shifts its focus away from the illegal battles of the 20th New York, away from the legal battles of the 20th century, and away from the high-tech corporate boardrooms of the modern world, turning its immense soothing energy directly toward you, entering the final phase of absolute co-regulation within the private sanctuary of your own dark room. The imaginary echoes of Manhattan begin to soften into a distant, beautiful whisper, guiding your consciousness back to the immediate reality of your own bed, your own blankets, and the perfect, regressed and uncompromised safety of your current physical space. Let yourself feel the incredible weight of the air in your room, a heavy, velvet darkness that completely insulates you from every demand, every expectation, and every noisy distraction of the waking world. Your journey through the timeline of Pantone 1837 has prepared your mind for this exact moment of total surrender, teaching your brain that beauty, order, and peace are permanent constants that will always exist to protect you. As you lie perfectly still, let your attention drift down to the very base of your body, starting with your toes, letting them release the subtle tension they have carried throughout the long day. Feel the relaxation rise slowly into your ankles, relaxing the heavy muscles of your calves, softening your knees, and flowing like a warm, gentle river into your thighs and hips. Every single muscle fiber in your lower body is now sinking deeply into the supportive layers of your mattress, giving up its weight entirely to the solid foundation beneath you. The house around you is completely quiet, holding its breath to protect your rest, standing as a silent guardian while you prepare to cross the threshold into dreamland. Your breathing has naturally slowed down, becoming a long, slow, and beautifully synchronized tide of air that moves in and out of your chest with absolute ease. With every single exhalation, you can feel a layer of unnecessary thought, leaving your mind as clear and unblemished as that open 19th century sky. Regorse, now, let that warm wave of physical relaxation travel up into your torso, softening the muscles of your stomach, relaxing your lower back, and expanding your chest with a gentle, rhythmic ease. Your fingers, which spent the day typing, scrolling, and navigating the frantic digital world, are now completely curled and still, resting heavily against the soft fabric of your sheets. The relaxation glides smoothly up through your wrists, releasing the tension in your forearms and melting into the heavy structure of your upper arms and shoulders. Your shoulders drop down, sinking away from your neck, releasing the heavy burdens of responsibility that you have carried for so long. There is absolutely nothing left for you to fix tonight, no problems to solve, to meet, and no roles to play. You are permitted to simply exist as a being of pure, undisturbed rest. Feel the soothing texture of the blanket against your chin, a soft familiar friction, as you readjust your head on the pillow. Latsat, latsat, a dry, comforting textile note that reassures your primitive brain that you are completely sheltered, warm, and entirely out of reach from any harm. The air you breathe is cool and perfectly still, yet inside your cocoon of blankets, your body holds a deep, radiant warmth that slows your pulse even further, calming your nervous system until it matches the profound quiet of the midnight hour. In the silent theatre of your imagination, you can hear the faint, majestic sound of the autumn wind travelling across the great distances of time and space. Imagine that wind originating from the dark, cold waters of the Atlantic, sweeping gently over the towering glass and steel structures of contemporary Manhattan, brushing against the granite facade of the empty Tiffany flagship store, and rustling the heavy velvet drapes that protect the silent blue boxes within the glass vaults. As that imaginary wind moves through the empty avenues of New York, it creates a low, resonant murmur that slowly bridges the distance between that historic city and your own window. You can hear it brushing softly against the glass outside your room, a gentle, rhythmic sigh that seems to say that the entire universe is settling down for sleep. The lock on your window holds firm, its heavy brass mechanism completely secure, emitting imaginary click in the back of your mind. Lack cack, 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 a sound of absolute protection that confirms the boundary between the chaotic world outside and the perfect peace of your internal sanctuary. The world outside can continue its restless, never-ending rotation, but inside this room, time has completely stopped its frantic rush. Expanding into a wide, open ocean of tranquility, the beautiful frequency of the robin's egg blue now lives inside your thoughts, not as a commercial product, but as a mental landscape of pure, unclouded serenity. You can visualize that perfect turquoise sky stretching out infinitely behind your closed eyelids, where your thoughts can finally dissolve into nothingness. Dissolve into nothing. Your jaw relaxes, your teeth part slightly, and the tiny muscles around your eyes and forehead completely smooth out, releasing the final hidden anchors of the day's stress. Your eyelids feel incredibly heavy, weighted down by the luxurious fatigue of a day fully welcomed, and a night fully welcomed. You are sinking deeper and deeper into the mattress, your body becoming lighter and lighter as your consciousness separates itself from the physical world. Your esteem, Susik. The slow tide of your breath continues its perfect automatic rhythm, rising and falling, rising in complete harmony with the silent, dark room. You are completely safe, you are deeply comfortable, and the gentle rhythm of the night is carrying you smoothly toward the final, ultimate rest. The final threshold has officially arrived, and the long, beautiful journey through the history, the lore, the philosophy, and the profound psychological sanctuary of the untouchable robin's egg blue now comes to a complete, absolute, and masterful resolution. The grand tapestry of time dissolves completely, melting away the boundaries between the 19th century, the 20th century, and the hyper-connected digital age, leaving only the pure, unfiltered essence of the present moment. The numbers, the dates, the metrics, the characters, and the endless accumulation of words no longer hold any weight or meaning in this space. They dissolve into the shadows like morning mist under a clear sky, freeing your consciousness from the need to track, to measure, or to analyze anything at all. You have arrived at the absolute destination of total stillness, a place where your mind is granted full, entirely untempt tether itself from the waking world. The room around you is a flawless vessel of pure peace, wrapped in a heavy velvet darkness that holds you with the utmost gentleness, providing a sacred, unyielding boundary between your internal sanctuary and the outside universe. The blankets surrounding your body feel incredibly heavy, yet you feel completely weightless beneath them, as if the physical boundaries of your body are softly blurring into the comfortable, dark air of the room. Your breathing has slowed to its deepest, most natural frequency, an automatic, effortless rhythm that matches the quiet, steady rotation of the earth itself. A slow, magnificent tide of air, move rising and falling, drawing you further and further away from the shores of wakefulness and deeper into the infinite, calm ocean of the dream world. In this ultimate state of rest, the vivid mental image of Pantone 1837 gently changes its form, shifting from an active visualization into a soft, ambient background glow that warms the deep corners of your mind. It is no longer a box, nor a legal statute, nor a commercial luxury. It is simply a vast, open, and completely unclouded twilight sky that stretches out infinitely behind your closed eyes. A space of absolute purity where no worries can survive, no anxieties can breathe, and no thoughts can disturb your total peace. The tiny rhythmic sounds that accompanied our long journey through history now fade into the softest, most distant echoes, losing their sharp edges as they merge with the deep silence of the house. The final whisper-soft shift of your shoulder against the pillow makes one last, barely audible textile sound. Lat-sat, lat-sat, a beautiful, fading vibration that signifies the complete surrender of your physical form to the mattress, the internal machinery of your analytical brain, which spent the entire day processing data and maintaining your position in the busy world, now engages its final task, not automatic shutdown sequence, turning off its lights one by one with a gentle, comforting internal click. Lack-cack, lack-cack, a sound of absolute protection that seals your mind away from the waking world and opens the grand golden gates of a deep, restorative sleep. The air in your room remains cool, clean, and perfectly stationary, carrying a profound sense of total completion and absolute security. Everything in your life is exactly where it needs to be. Every task is finished for the boken, every request has been flawlessly met, and every requirement has been flawlessly met. There is absolutely nothing left for you to achieve, no roles you need to fulfill, and no expectations you need to satisfy. The world outside can continue its restless, noisy march in the dark, but inside this room, you are completely free, deeply loved, and completely free to let go. Let the peaceful turquoise twilight expand until it fills your entire awareness, washing away the final lingering fragments of your conscious thoughts. You are falling now, sinking smoothly and effortlessly into a deep, beautiful, and utterly untroubled slumber that will renew your spirit and heal your mind throughout the long, silent hours of the early morning. The darkness is complete, the sanctuary is secure, and the night is ready to receive you fully. You have been thinking for long enough. Let the night come in. Take care of the people in your house tonight. Sleep well, my friend.